Well, hello everyone. Good evening. Welcome. Good to be with y'all. We are going to first settle into presence. Allow yourself to become aware of awareness and just breathe. It's an honor and a privilege to cultivate sacred space with all of you, both here and virtually. Much gratitude for your commitment, for your intention to bring peace, to bring light, to bring relief and healing to all life. And as we begin our journey this evening together, we are first and foremost reminded that we need take nothing for this journey because everything is found within. We must empty so that we can be filled. We must forget so that we can remember. And we must let go of all limitation so that we can return to the limitless presence that we all share and are in this dimension of always. Namaste, my friends. So that's going to be the theme for the talk for tonight. It's the saying goodbye to limitations. The image that I used on Facebook to draw attention to the service is Jim Carrey at that final scene of The Truman Show, where he's made it through that journey at sea, overcomes the demiurge or Christoph, the controller of his world, and climbs the staircase and is about to enter the door of the unknown. And he's got his hands spread apart like Christ on the cross. And it's right at that moment that he goes into the limitless, into the unknown. And so this is the theme for us tonight. This is, I think, why suffering can have purpose, why all of this confusion and pressure and fear and anxiety and frustration can actually become medicinal. That we're at a juncture point, I think, as a collective in our human experience, that things are emerging or surfacing, boiling up from the pit, in some cases, if you've been paying attention to the news. And I think all of this is part of the birthing process that we've been talking about, that we are, for whatever reason, here to help ourselves and each other midwife the collective soul. That's going to be the next wave of our experience, where we're no longer going to be in a state of fear. We're going to be in a state of love, forgiving, and compassion. And this is all our potential. And so we have to let go of this programming in a way that we've received, that we've been carrying the identity of limitation. And so when we look at these esoteric teachings in the East and the West, as Vivekananda had said in his Jnana Yoga, this is a higher psychology. It's a psychology for the healthy-minded, right? When you go to a Western psychologist, oftentimes you're dealing with your problems, you're trying to fix your ego, you're trying to make your relationships better. But in the East, this psychology that's been developed over millennia is really a psychology that opens us back up to the limitless, call it what you will, Brahman, Parameshwara, Buddha, Christ, Yahweh, Allah. These are all symbols of something that cannot be symbolized. It's the limitless part of us. It's at the very core of our being. It's where we've come from and where we're going. And so we need a psychology to help us navigate these inner currents and these subtle forces within our own consciousness in order to make that journey to that door of the unknown as Truman did, so that we can all be true people. Right? That was the Gnostic myth that was perfectly put into film, if you've ever seen The Truman Show. Oh, you have to watch it. Make that your homework this week if you haven't seen The Truman Show. What makes it really, really appropriate is he's born into a world that he thinks is real, and everyone around him is in on the game except him. His family, his relationships, everyone is there to basically keep him asleep. And he comes to discover that his world is not enough for him. And he's had this curiosity and this sense of adventure his whole life. But in the movie, and I'm trying not to spoil it too much for those who haven't seen it, in the movie, whenever he's had these desires to go beyond his boundaries, the writer, the producer of the show would create trauma. And so his father would, let's say, drown at sea in the show, but it's Truman's life. He doesn't think it's a show. So his father's, drowning and dies at sea, so he has this phobia of water, and he lives on an island. So he can't get off the island in his mind. And this is where we all are. This is why it's a monomyth. We brought up Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces a couple of weeks ago. This is the monomyth. We are all Truman. We're all born into bondage. I'm going to actually read you Morpheus's talk to Neo in a moment from the movie The Matrix. We're all born into bondage, but we don't know it because it's a psychological bondage. And that's why the higher psychology is necessary as a way of undoing these very subtle blocks and traumas and spells that we've been living in. We're in a hypnotic trance in most cases where we are just following blindly what we've learned, what we've been taught to believe, and we never question it. And so this deeper psychology or this deeper philosophy is all about inquiry. And most especially, who is the one that is believing these things? That's what goes to the root of the inquiry. Who's the one listening right now? This awareness, this witnessing state, the one who's watching, knowing, listening, the one who's aware. This is actually the gem, the priceless jewel, the pearl of great price that you are. That is, and we all are this. This is the one self. This is the true person. In Zen, the person of no rank. And when we begin to discover this, we realize we are already free. But when we don't know this jewel, this crystal awareness, this diamond, reflects whatever is in front of it. And so the I am becomes, I am this body. I am John. I am my story. I am my past. I am my problems. I am an earthling. All of these things become the designations that condition, control, and limit the I am. And the core of the I am is Allah, Parameshwara, Buddha, Christos. It's who we are as our true unconditioned being. but we've conditioned it with all of these designations. And so really the great psychology is a stripping away. It's an undoing so that we can be free. So on that note, something that many of you are familiar with, but it fits in with this service, the lyrics to Bob Marley's Redemption Song. Now, when we talk about, forces that are against us awakening, these forces of darkness, forces of ignorance, they do appear like they are showing up as people, institutions, subtle, hostile forces or demons or whatever. And that's the way they do appear to a consciousness that is split off from knowing its true self. But as we begin to awaken, we realize these are all just our own unconscious forces. We're the one self. So when Bob Marley talks about the pirates and those that kill the prophets, these are the forces of our own unconscious. These are our shadows. So there's no way that we can begin to blame others, judge others, and divorce ourselves from the responsibility of darkness. The awakening process, this juncture point where we shift into an age of compassion, is to realize you're the whole show. You're the only one. You're the one consciousness. And whatever you think is going on out there is actually your own trip. It's your own unconscious, repressed thoughts being fed back through the appearance of the world of form. Not the cause out there, but the effect of an inner condition. So it's really important not to get hung up on pointing the fingers at the pirates and the pedophiles and the Illuminati. We can see them. We understand that these are forces of our own unconscious, but we have to rise above it, not get in the mud with it. Okay? Old pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I. It's like I can't read it without singing it. I'm sorry. I have a terrible voice, I think, but. Old pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. But my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs. Now here's really the part I wanted to make clear. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear of atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Ooh, some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs. So, a couple of really insightful ways that he wrote this. Old pirates, yes, they rob I. And this is what we're talking about. We've given our I am to piracy. We've been hacked. We have given ourselves a false identity. So our I has been experiencing identity theft. When you see things cropping up in the world as situations, events, crimes, etc., these are all archetype. They all get traced back to an archetype. They are, fractal repetitions or iterations of an archetype. Our identity was stolen, not by something or someone out there, but by our attention. We turned our attention. And our I became a conditioned self, a little self, an I am this or an I am that. And the greater psychology is having you turn your attention back to the limitless I, the infinite I, the one I. So Bob Marley's saying, pirates, they rob I, sold I to merchant ships. Now, the merchant ships, I wanted to read this a couple weeks ago when I had Joseph Campbell's book, The Power of Myth. He says, you'll know what a society values by the buildings that they put in the center of their cities. So in the ancient world, you had churches, cathedrals, and temples at the hub of the city, and all life went around the sacred space that was set up for that civilization. And he made the point that in our day, it's the skyscraper. It's the executive buildings of big business that are now at the center of our civilization. They're running the show, okay? They're running the politicians too, just as an aside, but we won't get into duality. But the center of our civilization are the merchants, business, data gathering, right? Technocracy, money. That's what's controlling our civilization right now. And we sold I to the merchant ships. We sold out. We don't know it sometimes because this is subtle, like I'm saying. Our imagination has been captured. We live in our imagination. We live in our belief of what is real, and what is real is you're a body bounded by skin and bone, and you're living in a world that tells you what to think until you wake up, until you emancipate yourself from mental slavery. And he says, none but ourselves can free our minds. So, this is the idea then, that the uncomfortable experience first comes to the initiate, the one who wants to wake up, the one that feels this itch in her mind that something's not right with the world, something is just really off, there's got to be a better way. And the experience, as Carl Jung said, that when you begin to have that turnaround in your deepest place of your heart, the first thing that you're often going to confront is your shadow. And that's what Truman confronted. When Truman wanted to wake up, his best friend was sent in by the producer with his six-pack of beer, walking through the door. Hey, Truman, where are you, buddy? Where are you? Let's go hang out. Let's go have a beer. And Truman had finally begun to unravel this whole game of control that he was living inside of. And his best friend looked at him and he said, Truman, if that's really what's going on, then I would have to be in on it too. And so we have this experience of family and friends and, things that we've really put our faith and trust in, that it's not that, they're trying to control us, but the way that we see them and relate to them and the way that they see and relate to us become these ways of staying in the dream, staying stuck in the false identity. And so in order to come out of this mental slavery, we first have to confront our shadow. And the shadow is all of these parts of ourselves that we have not been allowing ourselves to accept. Some of them are, shameful and ugly and, not so noble. And others are our power, our beauty, our voice. To be able to say no to someone, because if you did say yes, it would be done out of guilt. And we push that down because that's not nice. You got to say yes. You got to be compassionate, right? So you're going to say yes, but you're saying yes and you feel wormy inside. That's why in Buddhism, compassion is always, the other wing is wisdom. You can't have compassion without wisdom. So sometimes you think it's compassion, but it's being done out of a false compassion. Because if you really looked, you would be aware of the fact that this is actually not serving either one of us if I do what they're asking me to do. So sometimes the ability to say no is repressed. The ability to set boundaries is repressed. And this is all part of the shadow, and it's all has to come up. That's why in the beginning stages of our journey inward, back home, back to Godhead, we are in a place of, disorientation because of our programming. We are a limitless being having a limited experience. And so all of the limitations have to be looked at, how we've self-limited. It's pretty wild because the one listening right now is eternal. You're never going to die. You're eternally aware. Right? This is yourself that will be here, and it was here before time began and will be here when time is over. And when you come to know that self, there is nothing in the upper, lower, or middle worlds that can in any way change what you know to be true. You're invulnerable. But in order to get to that place, you have to look at the limiting beliefs that we've accrued along the way and have been buying into. Some of them we're going to be like, yeah, get rid of that crap. Others are, really? This is mine. So we're going to have a tug of war sometimes with our internal state because there's a part of us that wants to be free and there's a part of us that is too afraid to accept the freedom that we already are. And we have to find the willingness to be able to confront that fear of liberation. Right? In A Course in Miracles, Jesus calls it the fear of release. He says, when you get lit up and you're sent out to extend this light to others, be aware that there is this fear of release. It's great news. It's joy to know your true self. But he says those that have been in chains for all of their life are not going to jump for joy when they hear this. They're still holding on to these beliefs. And it's going to take a while until they can start to really accept them and the chains of their mind can fall off. So, a couple of stories I'd like to share in light of all of this. This is from Idris Shah, the Sufi. And he says this in this little instruction about barriers. A man is anxious to free himself from a prison, and yet he strengthens the bars. Will he escape? These bars are the habits of depending only upon the little self, the desire for emotional gratification and selfish acquisition. Supposing someone were to want to rise above the surface of the water, but persisted in holding on to stones at the bottom of the sea, what would happen to him, and what would you call him? These are the attachments to outworn and irrelevant systems, ideas and slogans. Suppose someone wanted to grow taller, but kept himself in a box which dwarfed his growth. This box is the reliance upon cults and organizations, which dwarfs people's capacities. Supposing again that someone were to think that he wanted to travel, but yet placed great weights on his feet so that he could not walk or even move, what would you call such a person? Those weights are the desires for attention and for getting something before the time is right. Supposing yet again that some people were to aver that they wanted to be better people, yet they constantly stole what belonged to others and told lies, working against being better in any way, what would you call such people? Supposing finally that there were people who said that they wanted to see around them, yet who persisted in wearing blinkers or blinders, what would you call them? Those barriers are the habit of mixing attractive but useless formulae and totems, right? Paraphernalia and New Age beliefs, so to speak, with liberation teachings. So what he's getting at here is we have these mixed motivations going on within us all the time. This is part of looking at the shadow. If you're familiar with the work of George Gurdjieff, he had said that when you begin to take the insulation away, he called it buffers, when you begin to take the insulation away between your attention and what's really going on underneath in the subconscious mind, you'll see that you're a contradiction of beliefs and wants and needs and desires. There's a civil war going on below the surface. And so part of this inner work is to begin to see the inner contradictions, the split allegiances that we have. Part of us wants to be free. Part of us wants to stay comfortable. Part of us wants to heal. Part of us wants to do things that are actually detrimental to our health. We have all of these different pushes and pulls going on, which creates the dissonance within our own being. And instead of looking at that and feeling that and working through it, what we often do is push it down and project it out. And so then we oftentimes take a position within an ideology, let's say, and now we're at war with somebody else who believes differently than us. So instead of working with our own internal psychological conflict, we repress and ignore it, put it into the shadow, and then we project the shadow onto the Democrat, the Republican, whoever. And so we find these conflicts in the outer world only because the outer world is a feedback system that is actually trying to get us to look at the unconscious of our own mind so that we can heal. There's no way that the world is going to improve or find peace until we look at ourselves. This is the secret. Inner peace leads to outer peace, and there is no shortcut to that. You can't fix the world. You have to look at yourself, examine your own life, work through your own contradictions, and find that unity of intention that's going to bring you back to your core. Is it easy? Hell no. It's going to bring you to your knees. It's going to cost you everything. But it's worth more than anything you can imagine. It's what you really want. And what's really crazy is you'll never feel comforted, satisfied, at ease, or at peace with anything you ever find in the world. Because what you're really craving and wanting is this inner bliss at the core of your being. It's the only reality. Everything else is a substitute. So it gets to a point where you're like, well, what do I have to lose? I'm willing to give anything now. And once you make that decision, all of the forces of goodness and kindness and love and power and truth conspire to bring you in. And you'll be met every step of the way by this unseen hand of grace. You're never too old, if that's what you're thinking. That's a limiting belief. It can happen in an instant. All it takes is an unwavering will. And one more from Idries Shah. He says, people follow one creed or system after another, each one believed to provide the answer, the thing that will solve all problems. In the West, for instance, people followed religion and then threw it up for reason. Then they put all their money on industry and finally on technology. Until they have run out of panaceas, they are unlikely to cure this habit, right? Seeking outside yourself for the answer, the savior, the remedy. It won't be found, right? We've all gone there with hoping for change, wanting to see America great again. All of these slogans, all of these lies. They never pan out. They're all part of the control system. They're designed to keep you identified as your false self. And the only reason why they keep winning at it is because you refuse to look. You refuse to choose to go home. They will keep doing what they're doing, they being our own unconscious, until we're ready to wake up. So Idries Shah actually gives a cute little story about the nature of the world, and he sees it in terms of like this predator economy, that it's always there to take from you, never give to you. And it comes in stealth. It comes as a friend, as someone that actually wants to help you, right? If you've noticed, every time we've given up our freedoms and our rights in this country, it was all for our own protection. It was to make us safer, right? Don't fall for that stuff, right? Because that's the nature of this game. It's designed to take from you as long as you choose to play the dupe. There was once a man who took a flock of sheep and some bags of grain to market. He sold the grain and hid the money about him, and was looking for a buyer for the flock when a trickster approached him. "I know someone who wants a flock of sheep just like that one," he said, and led the farmer to a gate. "Just wait here outside this house," he said, "and I will drive the sheep into the yard and let the owner look at them. He knows me and is suspicious of rustics." He drove the animals through the gate and through an alleyway at the back of another road. Shortly afterwards, he sold the sheep very quickly and cheaply. Disguising himself as a pilgrim, he hurried back to where the dupe had just realized that he had been cheated. "Good sir," he cried, "I have just seen a man such as you describe driving a flock of sheep like yours into a certain barn. Come with me and I will show you." When they arrived at a large barn, the trickster said, "Go in there quickly, and I will hold your horse." As the farmer walked to the barn, intent on getting his sheep back, the thief galloped away with the horse and sold it in the market for 1/10 of its value. The farmer was deeply distressed and ran hither and thither, crying out, "I have been robbed." The thief now disguised himself as a scholar and found the distraught man once again. "Have you nothing left, my poor friend?" he asked. "Well, I have the money I got for my grain, so I had better walk home to such and such a place where I live and count myself lucky that something remains to me." "As it happens," says the trickster, "I'm going that way myself with this bag of money, which is to be used to build a new college." He indicated a bag which he had filled with stones. "Let us travel together for safety on the road." The farmer agreed, and they set off. After some time, the pair were crossing a bridge over a stream when the thief let his bag fall into the water. "Oh," he cried, "I'm ruined. I am too old and frail to descend into the river, and the money is lost. I shall be disgraced." "I'll get the bag," said the farmer, "if you give me 10% of what's in it." "Willingly," agreed the villain. And the farmer stripped off his clothes and left them, together with his own profit from the grain, on the bridge. The thief made off with the money and the clothes. When the naked and dripping farmer reached the bank and opened the bag, he found only stones. The shock finally turned his head. He is now convinced, they tell me, that all he has left, himself, will be stolen from him, and he ranges and roves the streets of the town, alternately calling for his lost goods and cursing the thief whom he so often thought to be his friend. Okay? So I think this story has double edge. One is, don't be a dupe and be discerning, right? Discernment is very important on the spiritual path. Discerning is very important when you're just trying to navigate your life in any way, right? A lot of false promises, like we were saying, are being made, and a lot of false appeals to safety and peace, etc. Don't fall for that stuff. As Terence McKenna said, culture is not your friend. The government is not your friend. Doesn't matter which party is in. It's, we talked about the mono myth. Well, there's a mono party, right? They don't serve you. George Carlin, and again, I'm not going to go into duality, but George Carlin, he says, they don't care about you. They don't care about you. They don't give an F about you. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. Right? So it's time to wake up from being a dupe. We've been a dupe as a society for way too long. Way too long. So that's part of that story. The other edge of that story, I think, is he was actually stripped of all of the distractions of his life, and it got down to the very core of his number one distraction, his fake self. He could have used that as liberation. It's really what has to happen in order for you to wake up. You have to lose your life in order to find it. Instead, though, he hardened his heart, and his bitterness and his blame was what then ran his life. And he kept living in the past about the trauma and the injustice that happened to him instead of waking up, right? And so as the Tibetans say, when you die, you take your state of mind with you. That's the only thing you take with you when you cross over. Your state of mind. What have you cultivated? What limitations have you let go of? What virtue have you strengthened within yourself? Right? That's what you're going to see when you cross over. And it will appear oftentimes as your environment and the people and beings in it. It's going to be your mind outpictured. So if you're getting stripped down at this time in your life, if you're getting completely to a place of inner breaking, as I had mentioned a few weeks ago that I was, that is when you can really do your work. And I was in a place a few weeks ago, many of you know, that I just felt like there was just this, it was between a death wish and a wanting to wake up, right? And I think they both go together. And it's this feeling of being completely done with the world. Like you realize there's nothing here. Really, it's all a mirage. And even if you think you're going to find what you want, when you die, it evaporates. It was really nothing. It was dreamlike, ephemeral. So when you get to that place of knowing there's nothing here and feeling that existential dread, that is the threshold into true awakening. And there's a part of me now that in some ways has allowed a sense of relief. There's been things that are changing and moving in a positive direction. But you want to know something? I keep going back to that place where it hurts so bad. I'm like, I don't want that to go away. I don't want to forget what it's like to feel that do or die moment of you gotta choose here what you want, and it's all or nothing. I don't want to forget that. I don't want to get seduced back into thinking, yeah, I could be comfortable here for a little while. No, there's no comfort in the world. There's no peace in the world. There's no happiness in the world. Can I get an amen? Right? And when I say happiness and peace and comfort, I mean like steady, where you're like, finally, I can relax. No, you have moments of pleasure, moments of happiness, and they're gone. Like Sri Nisargadatta said, pain is the constant state of being in the world. Pleasure comes and goes, and it's actually just another form of pain. Because when the pleasure leaves, you realize that hurts even more now. I found it, now I lost it. It wasn't what I wanted, or now it's taken from me. Whatever it is, it's a recognition of the first noble truth. Life is dukkha. Life is unsatisfactory. And the reason why it's unsatisfying is that we are craving to fill the needs of this false self. And what does Buddha say? He says, in order to find the peace, the joy, the nirvana, the heaven, stop. Be still. Turn your attention onto the witness. Really look. Dig in. Move in. Melt in. As deep, as deep, as deep as you can go into the nature of the witnessing light of awareness. You will find heaven. It will open up a dimension of being that is the fullness of life itself. This is the promise, right? So this is from A Course in Miracles. It's the section in chapter 21, the forgotten song. Think of redemption song, right? We all have this song playing in our deepest nature. It's the song of creation, the redemption song. And do you know what redemption means? It means being bought out of slavery. So in the theological language, being in sin was to be in debt. You couldn't pay your debt. And then salvation is literally an economic term. Like Jesus' name, Yeshua, or Yeshua, it comes from the word for salvation. And it literally means to pay off your debt. You're freed. You're now in a complete state of abundance and you owe nobody. So salvation is getting out of debt. Redemption means that you're bought out of enslavement to your debt, right? Because we are all debt slaves here, right? Are we not? Stop paying your bills. See what happens. So we are all debt slaves here, and the redemption is to realize that we actually are abundance itself, limitless itself. And he says here, there is no need to learn through pain, and gentle lessons are acquired joyously and are remembered gladly. What gives you happiness you want to learn and not forget. It is not this you would deny. Your question is whether the means by which this course, right, this path to awakening, is learned will bring the joy it promises. If you believed it would, the learning of it would be no problem. You are not happy learners yet, because you still remain uncertain that vision gives you more than judgment does, and you have learned that both you cannot have. Now, just real quick, without belaboring this, vision versus judgment is basically I am this body versus I am the Christ or I am spirit. So if I am this body, I am judging, I'm evaluating, I'm assessing, all on my past learning, my beliefs, my value system. Everything I'm looking at gets filtered through the lens of my personal judgments, my beliefs. Some of them I've learned, some of them I just generate in my own way. But vision is something that happens through you. When you go through your loss or letting go of the ego, the light of spirit, the witness, shines through you now, lights your mind, and sees for you. You're no longer your own. You have this new view and recognize the oneness of life in its deepest level of life, where you could see others as yourself. That's vision, right? So he's saying we're in a tug of war with these two ways of thinking and being. And then he talks about this being conditioned by limiting beliefs. He says the blind become accustomed to their world by their adjustments to it. They think they know their way about in it. They learned it not through joyous lessons, but through the stern necessity of limits they believed they could not overcome. And still believing this, they hold those lessons dear and cling to them because they cannot see. So it's learned helplessness, right? Many of us want to be free, we want to be happy, but this belief is really sort of a wishful thinking. Right? You know that experiment, as cruel as it was, that they did with the dogs. They put dogs on electric grids and chained them. This is going back to when we could do whatever we wanted to animals, about 60 years ago. And they would electrify the grid, and the dog couldn't get up because it was chained. And then they released the chain and electrified the grid. And the dog wouldn't move, even though he can leave, even though he can get up. And so we get traumatized, like we were saying with Truman. We get traumatized in believing that these are the limitations that we're having to adjust to. It's just the way it is. It's just the way life is. It's just the way I am. What if all of that is bullshit? This is really one of the major themes of limitation, or rather meditation. You go into meditation and you start to really look at your limitations. Like, take them apart. Look at their nature. What are they made of? And eventually you get to what the Buddhists call voidness. Because everything that you see that was woven together in the tapestry of your limiting belief, people, places, sensations, events, images, memory, your imagination, your story, it's this whole aggregate of why you feel limited. Bodily sensations, you feel it all. But as you keep sitting with it and with a piercing insight, you keep looking at it and intuitively letting this deeper light of your awareness shine on it, it begins to unravel. And you realize there's no such thing as this trauma. It was a thought, a belief that I had, but when I really look at it, it's made up of nothing. Like you have to do it. You can't just hear me say this. You're just going to conceptualize it right now, and it might sound right or it might sound impossible. But if you do it, if you look at your limitations with this insight of the witness, they do evaporate. Keep doing it. Keep looking. And eventually you have that lion's roar that it's said of the Buddha. Right? You come out of being this learned, helpless individual. Right? So the blind, he says, they do not understand the lessons that keep them blind. This they do not believe. And so they keep the world they learned to see, so-called see, in their imagination, believing that their choice is that or nothing. They hate the world they learned through pain, and everything they think is in it serves to remind them that they are incomplete and bitterly deprived. Thus, they define their life and where they live it, adjusting to it as they think they must, afraid to lose the little that they have. And so it is with all who see the body as all they have and all their brothers have. And so it is with, they try to reach each other and they fail and fail again, and they adjust to loneliness, believing that to keep the body is to save the little that they have. So remember what I had said, we get to that place, that threshold of all or nothing, life or death. And to go beyond it, you drop the body, you drop the little mind. Right? You die to the life that you thought you were. That's the greater psychology. The greater psychology leads you to ego death because you were never the ego, right? The psychology that's trying to repair and rehabilitate the ego just keeps you in the dream. But this psychology takes you beyond the ego, beyond your limitations. So this is where he's talking now when he asks us to listen. Because when we get to that place of knowing that there might be another identity, another self that is not the body, and it's right here, right now, if we just were to tune into presence, he says, listen. Perhaps you catch a hint of an ancient state, not quite forgotten, dim perhaps, and yet not altogether unfamiliar, like a song whose name is long forgotten, and the circumstances in which you heard it completely unremembered. Not the whole song has stayed with you, but just a little wisp of melody attached not to a person or a place or anything particular, but you remember from just this little part how lovely was the song, how wonderful the setting where you heard it, and how you loved those who were there and listened with you. The notes are nothing, yet you have kept them with you, not for themselves, but as a soft reminder of what would make you weep if you remembered how dear it was to you. You could remember, yet you are afraid, believing you would lose the world you learned since then. And yet you know that nothing in the world you learned is half so dear as this. Listen and see if you remember an ancient song you knew so long ago and held more dear than any melody you taught yourself to cherish since. And then finally here he says, beyond the body, beyond the sun and stars, past everything you see, and yet somehow familiar, is an arc of golden light that stretches as you look into a great and shining circle. And all the circle fills with light before your eyes. The edges of the circle disappear, and what is in it no longer is contained at all. The light expands and covers everything, extending to infinity, forever shining, and with no break or limit anywhere. Within it, everything is joined in perfect continuity, nor is it possible to imagine that anything could be outside, for there is nowhere that this light is not. So let's take a few moments just to quietly melt into the state of witnessing. And listening for this infinite self, which is infinite light. If you feel led, we can intone the sacred syllable Hu from the Sufi tradition that speaks of this as the sound of the infinite, the all-pervading love and power of God. Collective exhale, collective inhale. Two more. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Blue bag will go around. Thank you. We just bless the offering with the intention that whatever form this energy takes, may it be used as a reminder and a call to wake and be glad that we are the one. And so it is. Amen.
Amen.
All right, let's seal the deal, my friends. You can rise. And again, just abiding as the witness, this one eternal self, knowing that the one who's listening is the one and all. There is no other. And in this knowledge, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful evening, everyone. Thank you very much.
Good show, John. That was really good.
Thank you.